Welcome back. We are going to be talking about the 4 sets of policies as described in John and Miriam Carver's book, Reinventing Your Board, which is the basis for the Norwescap board moving forward with these policies. Is it for everybody? No, I would say it's not. You need to have a competent CEO, you need to have trust between the board and the CEO, and you need to have the board want to move forward. We lost some board members during this process because not everybody was ready to move that way, but at the same time I think our board has changed 180 degrees and is that much better off for it. Some of the key policies or principles is the board that speaks with one voice or not at all. This is key in that if you're going to move forward, when you're out in the community and make a decision, you support that whether you agreed with it or not, and that's really key to this whole thing. Another key piece is that the board defines and delegates rather than reacts and ratifies, which means they define what it's going to look like in the future. Most boards across the country react to things that the staff has already done, and then they ratify it. And ends determination is the pivotal duty governance, which means that's looking at the community, who we should serve, and at what cost. Other key principles are they define what needs to be done for the staff but not prescribe it, and then the staff moves forward. The board needs to set its own set of policies, not take somebody else's, or they'll never own it and never use it. There must be a good linkage that's safe between the board and the staff and empowering, and you'll see how it empowers shortly. And the performance of the CEO has to be monitored against this set of policies. So the first set is the policy governance model, which clarifies the board's own job and its rules, including how it connects to the community or the moral ownership. In our case, it's the low-income community. Each of the 4 sets of policies has a global statement. In this case, it's saying that the board does 2 things. One, it's there to make sure that we achieve the appropriate results for the appropriate persons at an appropriate cost. And 2, to make sure we don't do anything illegal or unethical. And that's really why they're there as an organization, as a governing body. In each set of policies, they drill down a little bit to the point of their comfort. And we'll talk about some examples of that in a minute. There's other 4 sets of policies. The chair interprets 2 sets, and the executive director interprets the other 2. The chair interprets for the board the governance policies, which are the ones we're talking about right now, and the board CEO linkages, which is the relationship between the board and the staff. And the executive director has the ability to interpret the ends policies, which are the ones that the board set, and then the staff make sure it gets done in the community. And I also have the ability to interpret the executive limitations, which the board sets. Those are the things I can and can't do, which will be described in just a minute. Some of the areas of governance policy are things like the governing style, which is how we do what we do in terms of, that's kind of the bylaw piece of it. The board job description, and all of our board members have that and sign off on that when they come on board. The chairperson's role. Carver says that the chair doesn't have any greater role than anybody else other than those interpretations of those 2 sets of policies. And the board members' code of conduct. What principles should they rely on regarding their conduct with each other? Just drilling down to give you a couple examples. The board will govern with a style that emphasizes outward vision rather than internal preoccupation, strategic leadership rather than administrative detail, and proactively rather than reactively. Once again, the board is forward-looking rather than going back and reacting to things that the staff have already done. They encourage a diversity of viewpoints. They initiate policy rather than reacting to staff initiatives. There are about 8 or 9 pages of our governance process and governance policies. And our board members have a copy of that, and if you are ever interested, just let us know. If you're an outside organization, we'd be glad to send that to you. The second set is the board staff linkages, which really define the relationship between the board and the staff, and the accountability piece. And we're much more accountable than we ever were, and I think the board feels a lot more comfortable than they ever did before. They would come to a board meeting and hope things were going on, but they really wouldn't know. Now we're super accountable, and it really works out well. Just once again, that global policy, the board's sole connection to the operational organization is through the executive director. So everything really goes through me, not that there isn't interaction with the rest of the staff, but I'm responsible for the organization's achievements. And only those decisions of the board acting as a body, once again that one voice, are binding on the CEO, which means if individual board members ask me to do things, I don't have to do them if I think it's going to take a lot of time or isn't worthwhile. And so it's really the board telling me what to do, not a chairperson or not an individual board member. The next set of policies are the executive limitations, which really describe what I can and can't do. They really set the boundaries of the parameter for me in terms of how I act and how I get things done. It really has created a very flexible and nimble situation, so I don't have to work every other month waiting to get a decision. I can make most of the decisions on my own as long as they're within those parameters. Global statement: to the best of my knowledge, I have not caused or allowed any practice, activity, or decision or circumstance that violates laws or contracts. So something you'd already do anyway, but that's the global statement. Certainly we drill down from there in the areas of how we treat the consumers, how I treat the staff, how we handle budgeting and planning, the financial condition of the organization, a succession plan if I ever step off the curb or take another job, what we do to protect our assets, not only intellectual information, but properties and finances. Compensation benefits, which is usually a board personnel committee. That's actually done through the executive director because I have a lot more knowledge about it in terms of what we can and can't afford, and as long as it meets certain parameters set by the board. And then how we communicate with and support the board's activities. And finally, once those sets of policies are done, those are really how they're going to interact, the board spends the rest of its adult board life on end policies, which really prescribes who's going to get served, what's the cost going to be. The board spends a lot of time self-educating about themselves, about how the organization works and how people apply, what the outcomes are going to be, how we're going to move people up the self-sufficiency scale to a safe and stable environment. That's the primary role of the board. That's where they need to spend their time. And just as a quick example, here's an ends policy. The purpose of the ABC organization is to move low-income people in the Peach region of Georgia towards self-sufficiency. That's kind of the global piece. But then how are they going to do it? It's kind of like an enhanced mission statement. Priority services will be in housing, child care, asset development, job preparation. So as a staff interpreting that, I know that those are the areas we can focus on. They've also said the secondary priorities will be in transportation, food, and healthcare. So if I was interpreting those policies as a CEO and I wanted to do mental health services, not there, I'd have to go back to the board and ask them. They want to, how many people are going to serve? At least 25% of the eligible population. They want to do it through strong community collaborations and make sure that social justice and non-discrimination will be pursued. So they really define that for the community, and that's really how they spend every board meeting, those 5 or 6 hour board meetings I talked about, totally engaged on how we move people towards self-sufficiency and trying to make that link to the community. So those are the 4 sets of policies. In the next video, we'll be talking about what we've learned here at the organization, and if you ever decide to do it yourself, what that would look like. Enjoy.